Welcome. I'm Liz White from the Author Selection Committee, and I'm honored to be introducing Alka Joshi, the author of The Secret Keeper of Jaipur, which is a follow-up to The Henna Artist. Alka and her family immigrated from India to California when she was 9. She went on to attain a BA from Stanford and began a 30-year career in her own business of marketing and advertising. When the 2008 Great Recession hit her business, Alka returned to school and to obtain a master's in creative writing. Her debut novel, The Henna Artist, was the result. Alka writes, if anyone had told her she would be publishing her first novel at age 62, she wouldn't have believed them. Nor would she have believed that the release date for her novel would coincide with a global pandemic. A happier coincidence is in the works. The Secret Keeper of Jaipur is book 2 of the Jaipur trilogy. Book 3 will be published next year. And that's just around the time that the Netflix TV series of The Henna Artist will be in production in India. Alka's new, intriguing novel, The Secret Keeper of Jaipur, turns on a royal construction scandal and a black market in 1969 India. It is the story of Malik, who is now a 20-year-old apprentice to the Jaipur Palace. Malik finds some disturbing secrets and must figure out what to reveal and what to keep to himself in order to protect the ones he loves. It is a story of love, power, and money, told with page-turning suspense. Many readers write they were so captivated they read it in one sitting. Literary Journal writes, with lush details, a return to favorite characters, and emotional complexity, this story satisfies on every level. Alka was a debut author at our Zoom event 2 years ago. We are thrilled to have Alka here in person. Please welcome Alka Joshi.
It is so wonderful to see everybody in person. This is so amazing. Thank you so much for being here. And of course, thank you so much to all these amazing women of the Pasadena Literary Arts for putting this amazing event together so that we can all be together to talk about books. Okay. So as Liz was saying, in 2020, I wrote a book called The Henna Artist that was published by HarperCollins. It took me 10 years and 20 drafts, and I gave up so many times because writing a book is hard. You open yourself up to criticism from agents, from editors, and from readers. There's so much of yourself as an author that you put in your book. But I persisted because this was a passion project for me. I didn't write it for anyone else but my mother. One of the things that I had realized pretty late, in my 50s, is that my mother had had a life that was so restricted, but she had always made sure that I would have a life free of all of the constraints that she had had, that I would be able to make my own choices about my partner in life, about my career, about whether or not I wanted to have children. She had a very conventional Indian arranged marriage, and forevermore she was always bound to the family and not with an individual life of her own. But then 2 years after I started, my mother, my muse, died, and I gave up writing altogether. My mentor encouraged me to start again. I did, and then suddenly in a couple of months, I have an agent calling me from New York and saying, hey, we love this manuscript in front of us and we want to work with you on it. I said, great, I'm going to get published, right? And she said, no, you're not getting published anytime soon. You have a lot of work to do on this novel. You're a newbie, you're a virgin author. So then she starts sending me all kinds of changes. I start making those changes. 3 years go by, and I finally say, hey, when are you ever going to send this off to a publisher? She said, I'm not. You are still not ready. And so I thought, okay, well, what do I do now? She said, hire yourself a developmental editor. I do. That developmental editor sends me back 18 pages of commentary and edits and changes. And I said, okay, you know what? This is a racket. This whole publishing thing is a racket. This is not working for me. I need to give up because I do not want to open myself up to all of this constant criticism. I gave up again. A year later, I am working at my desk, because I was still running my advertising and marketing agency all these years. And I was working at my desk, and all of a sudden I run across this manuscript, and I think, I spent so long. At this point, it's been about 8 years since I first started working on this manuscript. And even though Mom is no longer here, I still feel the need to put this out the door. I start looking at the editor's comments, and I start making those changes, and I send it all back. It took me another year to send it all back to Emma Sweeney, my agent, and I said, Emma, at this point, you have to send this off to a publisher. Otherwise, I am going to go somewhere else. I don't want to hold off any longer. She said, all right, hold on to your pants, no problem. And then she sent it off, and then within a couple of months, she had sold it to HarperCollins. And then my release date comes around, and as Liz was saying, it was right the day before the global pandemic was announced, so every single book event, launch, everything that had anything to do with my book was canceled. And I am here to tell you that no matter what age you are, no matter what your circumstances in life, you actually can do this thing called writing, because it is all you. It is all about this passion that you have for the project in front of you, for what you want to say to the world. And if you have found your voice, then this is the perfect time to do it. What started as a love letter to my mother then ended up as a love letter to my birth nation. So all this extensive research that I did to write my books and the interviews I conducted with my parents who were alive pre-independence, during independence, and then post-independence India, all of the books I read, the movies that I saw, the Indian movies I saw, they helped me to understand why India, a prosperous nation before the arrival of the British, was an impoverished nation once they left 200 years later. And the result of that was 3 major industries that they destroyed, and tens of millions of people in India who were out of work as a result of having no jobs. One industry they destroyed was a textile industry, another was a shipbuilding industry, and a third was the steel-making industry. These were all thriving in India, but the British wanted what was, everything India had to offer that they could trade. They wanted the spices, they wanted the raw minerals, they wanted the jewels, they wanted the gold. So these are the kinds of things they wanted, and they wanted to suppress the industries that were providing competition for the British. So all of those 3 industries that provided competition for them were destroyed. But I think that it's so commendable, as I did more and more research, so commendable that a once colonized nation didn't succumb to tyranny, to despotism, to autocracy, to dictatorship, and it's a thriving nation today. It's hard to control because there are 1.4 billion people on a stretch of land that is much smaller than the United States. And in the United States, there are 325 million people, but they all pretty much speak the same language, unlike in India, where they speak 200 languages. And there are as many varied religions in India as there are in the United States. So you can imagine how difficult it would be to control a country like that. And I think India does a phenomenal job, because today you will see Indian engineers, hardware engineers, software engineers, civil engineers, mechanical engineers, electrical engineers all over the world contributing to other nations Asians. And also you will find Indian doctors, Indian surgeons, Indian dentists, and many of you might already have them in your Rolodex already. So I think that this is a nation that is resilient, and writing these books has really helped me gain that perspective of India and gain a pride in my heritage, a pride that I think all of us deserve in our own heritages. Through Lakshmi's story in The Henna Artist, I had found my voice. Now, 6 months before it was released, I had a reprieve. The book had gone off to the printers, and I was starting a new novel, the one about the Hungarian Indian female painter who lived hard and died young at the age of 28 in 1941. I found her so fascinating. I visited India in 2019, and I went to the art gallery in Delhi, where I could look at all of her paintings in all their glory. But the character from The Henna Artist would not leave me alone, and that was Malik. He kept imploring me to write his story because I had so many versions of his story that had never made it into the final version of The Henna Artist. And I know it seems strange to readers. How can imaginary characters take over a writer's life? But every writer in this room understands what I'm talking about. When you live and breathe with your characters, when you sleep with them, when you eat with them, when you take showers with them, they are constantly with you. And it's like having a second family in your head all the time. They feel real. And then they begin to say and do things that surprise you, and that's where the magic of writing comes in. Sometimes you find yourself arguing with them, like, no, don't do that. I don't want you to do that. But they do it anyway. When I couldn't shut out Malik's voice any longer, I began to listen. And if you know Malik's character, you know how persuasive he can be. So I saw the first scene of what would then become The Secret Keeper of Jaipur. In this scene, we are in 1969 India. We are in the city of Shimla. This is a place where my family used to vacation during the hot Rajasthani summers. It's at the foothills of the Himalayas, and that means that it's much cooler up there. There are pine trees and cedar trees and lots of green valleys everywhere. And there are herds of sheep across the valleys, dotted across the valleys, goats, water buffalo, all kinds of vegetation and livestock. And there are historic monuments along the way at a place called The Ridge. The historic monuments are the Viceregal Lodge that was set up by the British, the Shimla Library where Rudyard Kipling used to write a lot of his works. And then, of course, there is Christ Church, a beautiful neo-Gothic monument. And along the way also are these vendors who are selling you trinkets, who are selling you chai and samosas and pashmina shawls, for your walk along this pedestrian walkway. Here's what I see in my imagination. It's a 20-year-old Malik, and he is leading Lakshmi to a particular stall along the walkway. Malik is no longer the street urchin that he was in The Henna Artist with his mismatched shoes and his, dusty clothes. Instead, we are seeing a polished young man. He has a smart haircut. He has closed-toed shoes. He has a crisp cotton shirt. I know that Malik has had an education in a boys' boarding school up in Shimla that has led him to become this very other kind of person on the outside. But I'm wondering in my imagination, has he changed on the inside? He is leading Lakshmi to a tribal woman's stall, and she is selling flowers and plants that are only found in the higher elevations. At this point, Lakshmi is intrigued because she has started that healing garden in Shimla that she left off in the end of The Henna Artist, where we left her. And she is very interested in bringing more exotic plants and flowers for the herbal remedies that she makes for the indigenous people in the area. But as she looks over at Malik to tell him what she wants from this tribal woman every week for him to buy, she realizes that they have a connection, the tribal woman and Malik. And I also see on Lakshmi's face that she's not happy about this connection. She's going to try to break it. Now, as a writer, I have to ask these questions. I have to understand Why is it that Lakshmi's not happy about the union between Malik and this woman? Lakshmi has made her own choice, her own partner in life. Why wouldn't she allow Malik the same opportunity? I have to ask also, what is this tribal woman who is supposed to be a nomad and traveling back up to the mountains for springtime with their herds of sheep and goats and water buffalo? She's wondering, why is this woman settled in Shimla? And, I don't know the answer to that, so I'm going to have to do some research on it. And then the third thing I have to ask is, what is Malik doing hanging around Lakshmi's coattails when really he should be starting a career of his own? He is, after all, 2 years past his high school education. I had no sooner, so I had no idea where this second novel would lead, but The Secret Keeper of Jaipur ended up taking twists and turns that were very surprising to me, that led us to the nomads who use sheep to carry illegal gold and contraband down treacherous treks into the central part of India. They led me to Maharanis who struggled to make ends meet post-independence. And they led me to the hard decisions that parents must make to allow adult children to lead their own lives, as I know my own parents did. I had no sooner finished 20 pages of the novel than my agent said, let's send those off to the publisher. And she did, and suddenly we had a contract for book number 2 before book number 1, The Henna Artist, was even on the shelves in libraries and bookstores. So when I finished the second book in the Jaipur trilogy, which also became a reader favorite, I had to write a third book for Radha, who is Lakshmi's sister in The Henna Artist, the younger sister. And as I said, these characters are very real, and one thing I knew was that Radha, at the time that The Secret Keeper of Jaipur is taking place, is actually in Paris. She is a perfumer. She is married to a Parisian, she has 2 little girls, and she's on the cusp of designing a signature scent of her very own. So of course, I have to go to Paris in order to do the research. I have to talk to master perfumers. I have to try on a lot of different perfumes in order to understand which is my fragrance. These are the joys of being a writer. The research leads you into all kinds of unexpected places. So began the third novel of the trilogy. I had no idea I was going to write a trilogy 3 years ago, and here we are. So The Perfumist of Paris is the name of the third book, and HarperCollins sent me a third book contract based only on 3 paragraphs that I sent them. And they paid 4 times the advance that they paid for book number 1 for book number 3. That will be published, that will be released on March the 28th, 2023. I don't say that to brag. I only say that because it's possible. Because it is possible as a woman with gray hair and, my mother is gone, my father is still alive at 90 and seriously in this world with us, absolutely. I say that because if you have a story in you, and we all have a story in us, we all have unique lives, this is an opportunity for you to realize it, to start studying, maybe take a workshop at night, do whatever you can to get your story out. Maybe you don't publish it for the world, maybe you just publish it for your families, but your stories are important, women, very, very important. And as a historical fiction novelist, I have to tell you that what we are writing about women in a past era, what we're doing is actually bringing back women in history who have been excluded, who have been ignored, who have been left out for one reason or another from our history books. These women were really alive. They did defy convention. They did do some extraordinary things. And they shouldn't be considered extraordinary. They should just be considered the strong women that they were and that we all are. Has the writing gotten easier? Yes. I understand structure, I understand pacing, I understand character development and tension in a way that I couldn't 12 years ago when I first started. Is it satisfying? Absolutely, because I care about these characters, and with each novel, they have grown as I have grown. These characters are imperfect as I am imperfect, but they try their best as I do. They are unsure, just as we all are. They're kind, as we all can be. And they are fearless, as we all have the capacity to be. I recently received an email from a 90-year-old man in Slovakia. His son Igor wrote on his behalf because the man does not speak English. He read my novel in Slovak. So his son Igor writes to me, I'm writing this on behalf of my father. I would like to take this opportunity to address you, greet you, and above all, thank you. I have just finished reading your book, which has coincidentally been left at my house by my granddaughter. I don't know your culture. I don't know the part of the world that you are from. I've never been there. But I know your characters from the village in which I grew up in Slovakia. And I think in the end, the characters I write about are every person. They are you, they are me. It doesn't matter that they live on the other side of this world. They serve to remind us that we share this world, that we share the same ideals, the same humanity, and the same need for love. Thank you so much for your attention.
Me? Yes, you can. My name is Amy Ulmer, and I am chair of the Author Selection Committee, and I have the privilege of asking the questions of the authors today that some of you have submitted. And I have a timer here, which is a little awkward, so I'm going to put it down. And you are such a pro, Alka. Thank you for that. You have answered almost all the questions.
Ooh,
so
great.
I might have to wing it a little bit. But I want to hear a little bit, one of the audience members here wants to hear a little bit more about your research in Paris for your next novel, besides the perfume.
Right.
Was there food involved? Or?
Oh, yes, there's lots of food involved. There's always food involved in my books because I think food goes to culture. Food is all about, how you spice food, how you eat food, whether you eat it cold or hot, what you combine different foods with. I think these all are very telling about the cultures that you're from. So yes, there is a lot of food in book number 3 as well as book number 2 and 1. So here's what happened. I wanted to go to Paris a lot earlier, but remember last year there were all these travel bans. As soon as the travel ban was lifted, I made an appointment with all of these master perfumers whose names I had been collecting. And I wrote to them via email, I called them, whatever contact I had for them, and I said, I need to talk to you about perfume. How does one become a master perfumer? How does one become the nose? But actually, I'll share this with you. They, in French, they don't actually like the word the nose. They feel that that's a little déclassé, but they like the French word for it, of course, le nez, and so that's how they like to refer to themselves. But I learned a lot about how perfume is manufactured, and one of the coolest things I found was that many of the ingredients that go into perfume, whether it's sandalwood oil, vetiver oil, cardamom, clove, cinnamon, lavender, rose, all of these things, they come from India. This is one of the main reasons why the European traders were interested in India. They wanted the spice route, and that's where all of these ingredients started to come from. So for me, that was gold, because now I could have a reason for Radha to go down to India to seek this very unique scent that she needs for her perfume, and she finds it in the scent of rain.
Thank you for that. So one of their audience members wrote, your writing is so immersive. We experience the sights, the scents, the beautiful saris, and the food. And you included an Indian recipe at the end of The Secret Keeper of Jaipur. What is the recipe, and why did you select this one?
Oh, okay. So I selected in The Secret Keeper of Jaipur, I don't remember which one it was, but I hope it was.
Make it up.
Make it up, okay. It's probably aloo gobi ki sabji. And it's something that my mother would make all the time because it's our favorite as a family. It is cauliflower potato. It's got onions and garlic in it. And of course, you can add peas to it. That's what's called mutter in Hindi. And it's got all of the other spices, the turmeric, the cumin powder, and fennel seeds, and cloves, and all of these wonderful spices in it. And so I wanted to choose it because, first of all, I wanted to write down how I have learned to make it from my mother. When I was growing up, I would always ask my mother, Mom, tell me how you make this thing. How many tablespoons of this? How many tablespoons of that? And she would say, honey, I don't know. I just do it by andaj, which is the word for like guessing, just because I'm so practiced at it. And I would try to write all the recipes down based on what I saw her doing. I never could capture it. So then I made the recipe myself, and I captured it the way I did it. And that's what went in the book. So it is my mother's recipe, but I wanted to honor her by making sure that I could put that recipe in there, because I know anybody is going to enjoy it, whether you are a vegetarian or a carnivore. You're going to love that recipe.
Great, thank you. So when you're done with the trilogy, we want to know, what type of book are you going to write next? Are you going to do a cookbook, or you?
I may go back to the story that I wanted to write about the Hungarian Indian Impressionist painter, because, she was so daring. She was at the École des Beaux-Arts in Paris at the age of 16. She was the youngest member ever admitted. And what was really cool is that when I wrote book number 3, I got a chance to put her name and her paintings in the École in that book, because there's a character who ends up going to the École. And I have to tell you also that what's happening in book number 3 is the young boy, the son whom Radha gave up, the baby that she had to give up in the henna artist, is now in book number 3, 17 years old, and he has come looking for his birth mother in Paris. So there's a lot of that kind of thing going on too. So another part of the research that I did was to talk to adoptive parents, adoptees, and that whole world of counselors in the adoption arena to find out what it feels like to be on all sides of that equation.
Wow, thank you. And I think we have time for one more. So you talked a little bit about the starting of the second book and walking through the herbalist. Did the character of the woman from the Highlands develop over time, or did you have her figured out in advance?
I never have anything figured out in advance. One time I was at my mentor's office, and I saw that on this one wall, she had Post-it notes scattered all over the wall, and each one of them was a scene from a book that she was writing, and she would move the pieces around based on what chapter she was going to incorporate one scene or another. And I looked at that wall, I was so intimidated, and I said, Anita, are you expecting me to do this for my book? Because I don't know what my characters are doing yet. And she said, oh, no, that's just my process. Your process can be different. Well, here's how my process works. I start with a scene in my head. It's very visual because I'm an artist. I draw and sketch and paint. And so I see the patterns, I see the colors, I see, what upholstery is on the furniture in the room. I see if there's a candle burning. I can actually smell what is in that room, like whether it's a flower or a stick of incense. And as I see this scene, I see the characters moving around in the scene, and I notice that this character is angry with this character, so why are they angry? And I let them play it out. And then I think, okay, well, I'm not sure. Maybe they should have a third character, and a third character will come in. And it's like a play that is forming in my head. So that scene will then lead to another scene, because I'll be wondering, why are these two characters mad at each other? And then another scene will come to me. And as I start, building the scene after scene after scene, I realize that I might need some transition scenes between two major scenes to make it work. That's how I build the story. So Nimmi, the tribal woman in the henna artist, all I knew was that she was mad at Lakshmi at the very beginning. everything, and that Lakshmi was not happy about the relationship between her and Malik. And then she grew from there to become a very strong character in the book. I had not intended to give her a first-person voice in that book, but she would not be silenced. And even though she is young, she's only, I think, 22 or 23 to Malik's 20, she is a very formidable character. And in a way, she's the only one who can stand up to Lakshmi when Lakshmi oversteps her bounds as a guardian of Malik.
Great. Well, thank you for that. Thank you, Alka. And a round of applause for Alka Joshi.
Thank you.
And we're going to have our next authors come up. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was beautiful.